With these fish, it's not like with a fish that only lives for a year. It's like getting a dog. Some of them live for 20 years. I have species like the arowana or my Parachromis dovi that can live for 30 years, and you have to be aware of that. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Chris Lukhaup and I just started a new series. You guys know that I travel the planet to look for nice habitats in creeks, rivers, lakes, but why not also show you interesting breeders or nice pet shops? And I will start with Germany, and just 30 minutes from my place I found a guy. His name is Rodney, and I like the guy, I like his philosophy, and I like the tank that he has. He has really a monster tank. We did the interview in German, so I will translate for you guys, so let me know then in the comments what you think about the new series and also what you think about Rodney. So we will start. Let's hear what Rodney has to say about his tank. I came into this room and I thought this guy knew exactly what he wanted. Is that right? That's right. I had a vision and I have to say I often praise myself, but I really did implement it exactly as I had imagined it. Yes. People who have visions are the ones who change the world, especially for themselves. Those who don't, they have to follow the visions of others. For me, the aquarium really changed the world, I have to say, but I hope I can also inspire one or two people to rethink how much space certain fish species really need, because here you can see fish that are often recommended for small aquariums, and I would also like to give an example that bigger is often better, especially when it comes to large fish or other monster fish such as arowanas here, for example. They really benefit from having enough space to move around. They benefit greatly from having sufficient space to move around. So you said you have 21,000 liters here, yes? And accordingly, you also have this big filter here. It's almost a work of art. And here too, you can see that you thought very carefully about how to do it. Yes, it took quite a bit of thinking until it fit. I also had to consider the space here and how to get the pump in at the front. The whole thing has to be built in such a way that I have very good flow and don't have to work with a huge pump capacity to get the water in and out. And from this filter, which isn't the only one I have, it goes up there into the trickle filter. So we have two fundamentally different systems in terms of filtration, one with a lot of oxygen and one without much oxygen, and they complement each other quite well. This is really ideal for the water quality. So a filter like this is really optimal for gas exchange, not so much for biology as it is the case here. All this nitrification, but especially for gas exchange, this trickling filter class is ideal, right? This is German engineering, right? I have to say that it fits, doesn't it? What's the temperature? I have seen that the thermometer up there shows like 27.4 degrees Celsius. Yes, but that's only the room temperature here. We have here, I have to look at it myself right now, currently 24.2 in the aquarium. It's also the minimum temperature it will have. I have a heater attached here, as you can see. There's a UV clarifier attached here and a small filter there. For normal condition, that's a large filter, but it's attached here and operates the heater and the UV clarifier, and it's all controlled so that if the temperature here drops below 24 degrees Celsius, the 3 kV heater kicks in. It's a pond heater and would then regulate the whole thing back up to 24.5 Celsius, but it doesn't usually do that because I actually heat the whole room temperature permanently with my room dehumidifier, which extracts moisture from the air and on the other hand gives off heat, and this heat heats up the aquarium itself. Considering all the technical aspects, the aquarium, the constructions, how much did you spend on it? That's difficult to say because I spread the construction over a year and then you bought something here and something else there, but I don't have an exact figure in mind right now. Not even an estimate?
Ich schätze mal, dass ich irgendwo zwischen 20.
I guess I ended up spending somewhere between 20 grand and 30 grand, and that's the cheap version. I had been getting quotes from people who could have built it for me, but that would have been unaffordable. By spreading the whole thing out over a year and doing pretty much everything myself that I could, I was able to keep the costs as low as possible.
Machen kann, konnte ich die Kosten so minimal halten, wie es irgendwie geht.
What criteria did you use to select the fish?
Gut, die Fische.
Well, selecting the fish, I've been doing this for a few years now. I'm 30 years old now. I had my first aquarium when I was 5 and I was relatively early on into preferring large fish.
Als ich bei den Großcichliden vorzugsweise gelandet bin. Und die Fische, die jetzt.
And the fish that are in here now were almost all moved here from my former 7,500 liter aquarium. Many fish that were not in there were kept in smaller tanks of mine because I still have a lot of offspring in there. And over the years it has simply become apparent that the types of fish I have in here get along well with each other, but I can't generalize that now. I can't say, but put these fish in a 2,000 liter tank, it will work.
Das klappt. Das klappt.
It works here, and it works for me because they have enough space to get out of each other's way. Each has its own territory and each respects the other territory, which is why I have a lot of offspring here, and that's also successful. It's just because of the space that it works so well with these fish here.
Mit diesen Fischen so gut funktioniert.
So don't be fooled into thinking that just because you have this species and that species, you can put them in a smaller aquarium and it will work there too.
Die Fische sind sehr gesund, also ich habe hier kaum
I
Flossen.
haven't seen much fin damage here, so there's only one fish that's causing a bit of stress in the aquarium, and you said that he has suffered a little.
Das ist hier der kleine Regenbogen.
Yes, that's a little rainbow cichlid here that has suffered a little bit of damage, but otherwise the fins are great, everything is fine, the fish are in perfect health.
Weil wir dann auch zur Wasserqualität.
Which brings us to water quality, which is probably also due to filters, as you mentioned, but we also briefly discussed feeding earlier. You mix your own feed, right?
Ja, ich selbst bin Ernährungswissenschaftler.
Yes, I'm a nutritionist myself and I think a lot about nutrition and animal feed, and accordingly I'm not someone who just orders dry food and throws it in here, but I really buy everything fresh. That means shrimp, mussels, prawn, fish, even whole fish with innards, everything that goes with it. I always put something together. Some days I only feed vegetables. But I have a lot of fish that are omnivorous, some preferably eating mainly plants, so I have to include a bit of everything. And then I also have fish like the arowana and the snakeheads, which benefit most when they get live food, because they really love it. And live food for me means that I also buy grasshoppers, mealworms, earthworms and so on. The fish really have a proper diet plan with me, and I decide at the beginning of the week what they will be fed and when. And I think you can see that in the animals, in their terms of their development, size, coloration, because if I just look at these perch here, the melanura, of which I have quite a few because they are all offspring. I have this male here, for example, which is now 3 years old, bred by me, and it may not look like it, but it's almost 40 centimeters long after 3 years. And that's due to the space, the water quality, and above all, I am convinced the food.
Und das ist halt dem Platz geschuldet, der Wasserqualität und vor allem, da bin ich überzeugt von dem Futter.
Was ich gesehen
From what I have seen, you don't have any large sucking catfish in here. You do have a large catfish down there, but you don't have any sucking catfish. That's quite remarkable for a Central American, South American tank.
Ja, das stimmt. Ich werde auch ganz oft
Yes, that's right. I get asked about that a lot. I had catfish for many years, whether they were panaque or other species, and there are some that would be suitable in terms of size, but I've decided against them for several reasons. One reason is that catfish really do make a lot of mess. There are some that make more or less, but still make a relatively large amount of dirt. That's one thing. But I would say it's something you could live with, right? The other thing, however, is their aggression. They often seem relatively peaceful in smaller aquariums when they have little competition, but the larger the tank, the harder it is for such a fish to get food. When I throw food in here, it falls 1 meter 80 to the bottom, and it becomes difficult for such a catfish to always get enough food. This means that extreme food envy develops, and Loach really goes for it when it catches a piece of food and defends it. And when the thorns they have on their sides, the catfish ram into the cichlids, and I have had so many eye injuries and similar things, which then got worse later, became inflamed, and the fish died. Or there were constant fights when it comes to offspring, because a catfish is also an extreme scavenger, which many people don't know, but it's active at night and it goes after the eggs when the cichlids have just spawned, and then you have stress here, which is why I eventually said goodbye to the sucker catfish. Many people have them in their aquariums because they say they clean everything and eat the algae, but for algae I have my Flacte Kerasin, 2 of them actually. This is one here, one size smaller, and the other one in the back is quite large. It's a good size bigger, and they spent the whole day digging through substrate and cleaning stones. So if you have something like diatoms, your aquarium, which is often the case here, because your tap water is very rich in silicate, they love that, and that's why now I don't have any algae in the aquarium. You can see that. I don't go in there, I don't clean the walls or anything, but it all works because on the one hand the filter performance is adequate, and on the other hand because I have these 2 colleagues here who do a good job.
Und das sind keine Malawi-Barsche, nur das ist...
And there's no Malawi in here, right? There are mainly American cichlids in here, mainly Central American cichlids, but there are 2 cichlids in here, these 2 that come from West Africa. Yes, and I know that many people don't like it when you mix them together, but the bottom line is that on one hand they are not mouth breathers like those from Lake Malawi, which means they are very similar in terms of social behavior, and on the other hand the rivers of West Africa, where they come from, the pH value, the overall values, everything matches the water values as in the case with the Central Americans. And I have the space here. I had them back then in my other aquarium. I took them in and actually wanted to give them away, but I really fell in love with this species. They are great, they are such wonderful animals, and I think they are beautiful too. Very rarely see them in this size. They are only 3 years old, so I think there's still a lot to come. And I'm very glad I kept them and they don't cause any stress in here. It's such a classic fish that destroys everything in many smaller aquariums, really goes after everyone, and it works great in here because they simply have enough space and stress doesn't play a role here.
Wie viele Fischarten hast du?
How many fish species do you have in here, do you know?
Kann ich dir gar nicht sagen.
I can't tell you, I have to count first. 12 to 15, and you have a turtle in there.
Eine kleine Schildkröte.
I have a turtle in here, and I've always had a soft spot for turtles, more for tortoises, which always I had them at my home, but I also wanted to have a water turtle, and a friend of mine also has water turtles in a tank of smaller size, and they're the same species as this one.
Die gleiche Art wie die hier.
The species name is Emidura subglobosa. That's a neck-turning turtle from Australia, and it doesn't get very big. The females reach a shell length of maybe 20 centimeters. The males stay a bit smaller, I guess, and so this is maybe or most likely a female.
Ähnlich.
Und du hast sogar gedacht,
And you even thought about building an exit of the aquarium, which is very thoughtful for all the animal lovers among us.
Also man
hier
sieht
ist
dort
an
hinten,
alles gedacht, ne?
Of course, there's an exit, a little wooden ladder that I built. Up there, there's also a mercury vapor lamp which emits UVA and UVB radiation and heat. That means that she can go out of there if she wants, rest on the rock up there, or not dry off nicely, which turtles need, but she's very aquatic. As you can see here, she actually prefers to be in the water. I see that you don't have any water plants in here. No, I don't have any aquatic plants in this tank. I have immersed plants like the ivy vine back here, which hangs in here with its roots, of course, has a bit of an effect on the water quality because it's slowly starting to grow up there, but I can't work with aquatic plants here because you can see how the cichlids dig everything up. There are 1,200 kilograms of sand or gravel in the aquarium, and you can see the mountains they're building back there, digging everything up, everything.
Das wäre keine Option, Pflanzen irgendwie.
It wouldn't be an option to stick plants in the ground like Anubias or something like that, because all my plant-eating cichlids would be happy about that, and even the mosses would also be eaten away, so that's not an option. I've also tried floating plants, but they were gone after half an hour.
Hier, also das muss man natürlich, das muss einem gefallen, das muss man wissen.
Well, of course you have to like it, but actually I think it's very nice, and I want to expand the whole thing a bit with the immersed plants. I'll be doing that soon. I have a few more plants above the tank on the left side. And yes, that always creates nice shady spots where the fish like to hide. For example, the snakeheads just sit down under the turtles' exit during the day, and when it gets darker, the light is set to simulate dusk.
Das Licht ist ja so eingestellt, dass es die Dämmerung simuliert.
So this right now is the bright version.
Genau.
Okay.
Ja, und
Towards evening I feed them too, which I think is more natural because the fish go hunting at dusk, they eat then, and you can see that the snakeheads are much more active here at the front where it's more dark.
halt auch, dass die Schlangenköpfe viel mehr hier vorne unterwegs sind.
Also du würdest schon
So, would you say that you are one of the people in Germany who has one of the largest aquariums in their home?
Oh, ich denke doch, also ich kenne
Oh, I think so. I already know a few people who kept freshwater stingrays and such, and some of them have really large tanks, even around 100,000 liters. But there are only a few who show and share this on social media, which is a shame. But I'm one of the few in Germany who has a tank like this and who specializes in large fish. Many of them are involved in the monster fish keeping scene, and there you have everything from redfin antenna catfish to pacu to who knows what else. I know some who have arapaimas in smaller aquariums.
kleineren Aquarien. Ist alles nicht so mein
Well,
Fall.
it's not really my thing. I like it when I have smaller fish in here, even my silver dollars. I also could have gotten Schomburgki, which also grow to 50 or 40 centimeters, around that, but I prefer these smaller species like the Argenteus, and I really like them. So you don't necessarily need to have huge tanks and huge fish. The ratio is the same as with small fish.
Mit kleinen Fischen.
also all in all
All in all, you pay attention to a lot of things, you go into detail, and that's important, even if you have big things to go into detail. You have relatively little light at the top because this light would naturally also stress the fish, right? They would then retreat to the dark corners, and this way everything is well distributed.
Gefragt hast, ob ich die Fische schon mal in Natur.
Since you mentioned it, you asked me if I had ever seen the fish in real life. Yes, I have, in Costa Rica, for example, where I took a really good look at the lightning conditions there, the nature of the ground, all those things, and it's often very dark, or where they live it's always very shady. The substrate is not as fine and sandy as people often assume, but rather very mixed, which is why I try to imitate that here. And yes, I try to make the whole thing as species appropriate as possible, of course. An aquarium will never be able to replicate nature.
aber in
es
der
ist ein
Natur haben
guter
sie auch
Versuch.
viel mehr Stress und Feind.
In nature, they also have much more stress and pressure and diseases and so on. And in nature, they are rarely so flawless. And they even reproduce here.
Diesem Aquarium. Und sie vermehren sich auch. Das heißt,
Die vermehren sich auch und ich habe halt auch
Also reproduce, and I'm not somebody who keeps wild caught fish. So if I'm interested in fish somewhere, the first thing I ask is whether they are wild caught, and if they are, I stay away from them because I don't want or I don't need fish that have been taken from nature. I prefer to breed my own fish. This whole school of Via Melanura is all mine. The lemon cichlids, the Mesoheras festae here, I try to breed them myself, and I don't eat animals that have been taken from nature. There are so many fish that can be easily bred in an aquarium, and yes, even all the Parachromis dovi, which kind of rule the tank here. I have several small territories with females that are raising offspring and a male that guards and protects the harem.
ein Männchen, der das Harem halt bewacht, beschützt. Auch alles nachgezüchtet. Also
Everything is bred from existing stock, right? So you don't add just new fish. You are very careful about that, right?
bin da sehr vorsichtig. Zum einen halt, was
I'm very cautious about this. On one hand, because of the risk of introducing diseases, And on the other hand, it's also difficult with these species. What can I add and what can't I add? And if you blindly put fish in here and it doesn't work, you have to take them out again, and then you have a problem. And I don't like swimming in here, because then lots of people always will ask me, do you go in there too? I've been in there, of course, because the wood had to go in somehow and the plants had to be put in place. But I avoid it as much as possible, because as soon as I go in there, I see that my arowana, for example, the fish are all at the bottom, they are going all crazy, and this is just stressful for the fish. And I want to cause them as little stress as possible, so I try not to go in there. I'll have to go in again soon, because, as I said, I want to add a few more plants, so there's no way around it, but that's all.
Ja, was möchte ich mitteilen? Ich versuche das, was ich...
I try to share what I do because of one thing. I believe that if you keep these animals, you should be aware of how old they get, how big they get, what these fish need. And I'm not someone who keeps their fish in the living room, for example. I know what stresses the fish. I would never keep my fish in the aquarium in the living room, because there I turn the lights on and off in the evening, and that stresses them. I'm someone who likes this room to be completely dark when the lights are off, so no one comes in. I just try to make life as good as possible for these fish in captivity. It's captivity, but they were also born in captivity, and if I can provide them with a 21,000 liter tank, I think they are doing well. You can see it in their colors, how they reproduce, and I just try to show the people a little bit of what it is possible with my content. I also started small, growing from 1,600 liter to a tank of 7,500 liter, and then to this one.
Einer angefangen. Ich habe ja auch von einem 1600 Liter Becken bin ich auf das 7500, von dem auf das hier. Man kann ja
You can start small, but you should always think carefully about what you want to keep, how old the animals will get, what they need, and whether you want to put yourself through the stress. With these fish, it's not like with a fish that only lives for a year, it's more like getting a dog. Some of them lived up to 20 years. I have fish species here such as the arowana or mydovis that can live up to 30 years, and you have to be aware of that, and that's why I'm showing this. But I also like to show it because I learn from others. I also look a lot of what others are doing, and in other areas, koi for example, including nano aquariums.
Aquaristik. Ich finde, es können...
I think there is so much we can learn from each other. You shouldn't always separate things into categories like these are the monster fish corners, nano aquariums or cold water aquariums. I think everyone can learn from everyone else, and that's why I want to create a community on my platform where people can exchange ideas and simply learn from each other to make the whole thing even better.
Du bist auf YouTube, auf Instagram, TikTok,
Genau.
Facebook.
And then you'll find me everywhere under Rodney's Fish Tank with the same name on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook and Instagram. I post on Instagram more often because it's quicker. YouTube, as we know, requires editing and production, but then you get more detailed videos there. So if you're really interested in what's in there in terms of stock and so on, you can find it in detail on my YouTube channel.
Ausführlich.
Sehr cool. Ich danke dir vielmals für dieses Interview.
Well, I really have to thank Rodney for this interview. I learned a lot. I've been in South America, in Brazil, Amazon, Rio Tapajós, and I could see some of the fish in nature. But this was a new experience with me. Thanks a lot, Rodney, for learning something today. And thanks to you guys for listening to this unusual video. It cost me a lot of translation. I try to translate simultaneously, which is not that easy, but it's a new thing. I hope you like it, and if you want, you can subscribe, and I see you in the next video. And attached you also have a picture of where you can find Rodney, his channel on YouTube. Let me know if you liked the video, and I see you in the next videos.